Welcome to another edition of Baseball and Beyond. Today we're at the Ball Yard. Cardinals are playing their last weekend series, and I get a chance, I say this every time, but this time I really mean it, to talk to one of my all-time favorites, Randy Flores. Hi, Randy.
I'm not supposed to say you say that every time.
I've noticed that I say it every time I start an interview, and some of the people I don't even know. I'm like, my all-time favorite, let's talk it over with Tom Green from MTV. By the way, Tom Green's been on the show.
I saw that. I looked on your Twitter account.
Did you listen to any of these or no?
No, but I saw.
You have all off-season to sit and listen to this.
I am looking forward to catching up on life, and one of those will be catching up on this podcast.
I would skip the Tom Green episode if I were you. But I listened to Skip. Skip Schumacher was fun. Good guy. Former teammate.
Yeah, heck yeah, I will.
Who's your favorite former teammate?
They're like children, you know? I got no favorites.
Brad Thompson.
Yes, Brad is definitely at the top of the list. Ridiculous guy.
So we'll talk about your career back in the day. I love the stories, and you're a good storyteller, but why do you laugh?
It puts me on the spot for this one.
Yeah, just think of that while we ask these questions about being a high-paid executive for the Cardinals and being the scouting director. I think it's so cool that they called you and just and I know it's most people have heard the story, but you were kind of doing your own thing. You had a company that you were doing kind of a scouting service on Deck Digital, and then Mo calls you out of the blue and you become the scout. I mean, just tell us a little bit about the process of becoming there's only 30 of these jobs. This is a pretty cake job.
Yeah. I guess I would go back to what path I was attempting to chart outside of the uniform. And although the path was not intentional to do what I was doing in order to become the scouting director of the Cardinals, it certainly seems, looking back, that that's what I had been planning all along. But simply, it was going back to graduate school first, and then being embedded in broadcasting, starting a business, becoming a college coach. All were parts that have helped prep me in some form or fashion for this role. And although Mo's invitation to apply for the job, that invitation was out of the blue, the connection with him was not out of the blue. In fact, he had written a letter of recommendation for my graduate school. I had kept in contact with him since I got done playing, as I sought his advice as a sounding board on a transition out of the uniform. And when people ask for advice about how to get into the game or about what to do to develop in their career, my advice is simply to treat every encounter and every day like a job interview. Because unbeknownst to me, I had been going under about a 3-year job interview with Mo.
Mo doesn't like me so much, so I don't think I have this. I'm just kidding. But he did a couple times say some funny things to me where I'm like, well, I didn't realize that's how you felt. I mean, we had this interesting relationship. I love Mo, but it's funny.
Mo's released me once before as a player, and he'll release me again if I don't do this job. And so I have the utmost respect for the role and the weight of the responsibility. It's something I take very, very seriously, and I'm thrilled to be given the keys to this department.
So is there a philosophy that you come into the job with, like what you're going to do as a scouting director, and what is the philosophy, if you can talk about it?
I think that's one of the things that made me an attractive candidate, is that I did not go into it with any preconceived notion of how I would run a scouting department. In fact, to most of the questions I received during the interview process, I asked for a year or two for my own opinion, because I did not come in with any attached biases to how I had done it before. So it's a long-winded way of saying, philosophically, I wanted to see how things operated and then see how I might pivot or leave an imprint or an impact that's different than the way it was done before. A lot of that stuff, though, just basic philosophy, carries over from a locker room. Realizing that what a team concept is, realizing that there's different roles within the team, everyone pulling in that same direction. Just like on the field between the white lines, in the scouting department, you have people who have different skill sets, live across the country, and you have to trust that everyone's doing their part to get the best draft pick at each round.
So is there a philosophy? I mean, do you have, I know it's different every year, but do you say, wow, not a lot of power bats in our system, let's kind of look for that this summer? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's a little dangerous just because typically the players you draft, as you know, even though the Cardinals have set the standard on player development and scouting, there still is a lag time between when you draft them and when they get here. And so
Trevor Rosenthal and Jason Mott, right? Catcher to pitchers.
You're exactly right. And so it's basically just to maximize your opportunities for talent, and to do it within the parameters provided by the draft. A signing bonus, a signing pool. And the philosophy is simply to not change from that and to try to not get caught up in what we might lack in the big leagues or what injuries or a trade might have decimated, and instead to be consistent, looking for talent.
So it's very early in your career. Do you have, this is probably a better question 5 years down the line, but proudest moment so far as a scouting director, like somebody you see or something that you saw as you were doing your job?
You're right. So a particular player, that would come down the line, I think. But even just this last year, I was very proud of our staff and how they worked, knowing that we did not have a first-round draft pick, we didn't have a second-round draft pick because of signing Dexter Fowler and the sanctions. And after going from a new scouting director, trying to take some of the lessons of that year to the next year, it became a little bit difficult just because now the type of place that we draft first is much different. That being said, I was proud about how our staff, our scouts, our department rallied around trying to do the best job they could independent of where we drafted. And they did that on their own. It didn't require any prodding from me, and that's something I was very proud of them for.
We've heard of other teams kind of just eliminating major league scouts, and I think it's kind of not, I guess being the scouting director, it's part of your job, but tell us a little bit about the scouts and how many there are and kind of what the makeup of this group is. Is there major league scouts still, or is it still more now, let's find talent, young talent, and bring it to Randy, and then you guys evaluate?
Yeah, so the way we're split up, my responsibility is strictly over the amateur draft, and so we do have major league scouts. We do have scouts who scout the minor leagues, international, but my focus specifically is related to the amateur draft, and we bucket our scouts via an area scout, a regional cross-checker, a national cross-checker. We have analysts. We have special assistants who also serve as scouts. But it's their job to canvass year over year every player eligible for the draft and try to help us rank them accordingly to how we like them.
Who do you like? Who do we got in the system that we should be saying? I know it's hard to say. I know you said kind of specifics are kind of rough, but I want to just see sort of maybe the state of the minor league system. We saw 2 championships in the minor leagues. This is a great thing for obviously the team to know that Palm Beach and Memphis, have championship rings.
Yeah, you know what? I think that we're excited about the pipeline, and rightfully so. As you know, 2 years ago, each of our short season levels won a championship right after the draft. Those 2016 short season teams. We had 2 championships last year. Gary LaRock, our farm director, would be the person to best message who he thinks are those closest to here. But I think what I am willing to share is that I think that there's good balance in our minor leagues right now. Certainly from you saw 11 players called up this year who had their first experience in St. Louis. Then going all the way down to our short season teams in our draft, there's balance up and down. Those with upside, those who are a little bit more polished, collegiate pitchers, and then also the high school athlete. And so our hope is that each and every year we're able to fill any of the needs here with our minor league system.
We'll get back into your scouting job. This is a little too serious, though. I want to ask you, tell me about Steve Klein.
Wow, what a segue. You know what? Look,
I'm the king of those.
Steve Klein was a great example of someone who took the ball every day.
No, not that.
And in 2004, when I got called up, I was in Memphis. I want to say almost 2 weeks before I got called up, I was at lunch with Dan Herron, and I was telling him that this is in August, that I think that the season, 2004, was going to be my last season. I just didn't see me playing again. I was performing very well. I was in the league leaders in ERA. I was going back and forth between the rotation and the bullpen, and it didn't seem like my chance would come. And Dan encouraged me, like, why? He encouraged me to keep going. He said, why? I said, look, I'm doing everything I can. I'm almost 29 years old. If it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. 2 weeks later, Steve Klein pops his groin covering first base, and he gave me that injury. I got called up. And I've been on other teams where when someone gets hurt who's in your role, who's a veteran, they're not always kind to you. And Klein was the opposite of that. In fact, all of the bullpen was the opposite of that. It was a very unique experience to see a team that was that confident in themselves, and then that accommodating to a rookie to know that, look, their job, they felt, was to shepherd me into the great tradition of wearing a Cardinal uniform, and Klein did that for me.
Any fun? I mean, you weren't around him much because obviously he left after 04 and you kind of had the cup of coffee. Yeah. But the man is a crazy man.
Yeah, no, in a lot of ways I'm jealous of him because he was able to be very loose, and he kept the clubhouse loose. He competed. He was the same whether or not he won or lost, and those are a lot of the things that maybe I struggled with. I wasn't always that way. I was more reserved. I had moments, but I certainly I wasn't a mirror of Steve Klein, that's for sure.
So my favorite, I mean, this team in 05 and 06 and 04 too, I love the team because they're great, but I got to know you guys so well, and it was just fun to watch you guys work, be around you guys so much, and to see you and Izzy work together as friends more than anything. I mean, you guys have more stories off the field than you can probably talk about, but just as Klein called him dum-dum, tell me a little bit, if you have a funny Izzy story that makes you laugh. You just laughed here, you obviously have something.
No, look, he's such a gentle giant. Let me just go professionally. What I appreciate about him is that he had a lot of success here. And at the end, with injury and ineffectiveness, it got hard for him, hard to handle. And he was the example of someone I saw who here, when things were not going bad, I can't recall him ever, really bad-mouthing his situation or the fans or the city or blaming other people. He was responsible, and he was a pro. I know that not everyone else here has done it that way. I've been around it. And so I've always just respected that behind closed doors he was responsible, and then in front of the media and in front of fans when this place was booing him, he was a stiff upper lip. Not everyone knew the injuries he was going through. So professionally, now as a guy, he's a gentle giant. I mean, like, he could snap me with one hand, literally snap me, and yet he would just let me mess with him so much, almost like a little cub and a I don't know, the leader of the pack. I was like the little cub who was just patting his nose and thinking that I was, really having my way with him. And with just one swoop of his paw, he'd pin me to the ground and let me know again that, look, Flo, just be careful here, I could snap you. And so as a friend, as a bullpen mate, as a competitor, he was a lot of fun to be around on both sides of the field, off the field and on.
The 06 team is special for everyone. I'm sure it has a special place in your heart. And again, I remember being at spring training and watching this group, because you've had the two near misses in the NLCS World Series in 04. You guys just seem like you had so much fun. Obviously a tough season, but tell me a little bit about coming into 06, and now you're kind of established, and Tony gets some confidence in you. Tell me a little bit about Tony. Like, how often did you get to deal with him? I mean, was it, hey, you're coming in tonight, we need you, you got Adam Dunn, you're definitely going to be pitching to him. I mean, what was it like with him?
So I've always said, who was the best manager I ever played for, and I always say it was Tony La Russa. And it was his consistency that I valued more than anything, in that he was always looking to put you in a position to succeed. Additionally, you look at my numbers, you know that I struggled. I was not exactly, a Cy Young caliber pitcher here. And Tony, again, always defended me publicly whenever those struggles came. And even in some of my private moments when I sought him out, relaying an acknowledgement that I was struggling and that I was hoping to turn it around, his encouragement was always to mention, look, Flo, this game's hard. Ease up on yourself. You're going to get through this. And so, after being up in the big leagues almost the entire year in 2005 and in 2006, knowing that I would have a role, knowing that it was Tony's belief in me, carried me through the ups and downs of that season. And then certainly, as we got to the postseason and he continued to put me in the game, I really knew that if Tony trusted me enough to put me in those games, I needed to trust myself enough.
It's so crazy. Every time I talk to a Cardinal who played for him, it's always that the manager showed me that I could do this. Skip was the guy that I just always think of. I mean, Skip, I don't know what he would have been if he didn't play here. Yep. Aaron Miles. Yep. I mean, Aaron Miles got millions of dollars from the Cubs, and I just believe he got it because of Tony. He obviously played great, hit 300. There's got to be something to that, though, when the man up front is doing that. But 06, it's just such a special season. Tell me a little bit about just watching Waino. You had You had Brad Thompson, another young guy. I mean, that bullpen was fun, but Josh Kinney, yeah. It's just a fun bullpen. And it went, I mean, we saw it in 2011. Tony used Dotel and Zipchinski. But 06, I don't think people remember. Kinney was huge. You were huge. Tyler, tell me a little bit how much fun you guys had, because that was in a mix. You had Izzy, the old guy. You had the young guys, middle of the road guys. Just tell me a little bit about how much fun it was to be around that group.
It was. And look, all of us, I think that you mentioned those names. None of us had more than 3 years in the big leagues or 2 years in the big leagues. And so it's almost like when you see a guy like Brad Thompson go out there and he's pitching in a big game, he's not exactly Mr. Intimidation out there. And so neither am I.
He should tanned a little bit or something.
Neither am I. And so it's kind of like, I'm sure we're all looking at each other being like, look, if that guy can do it, then I can do it. And it was almost encouraging, like, all right, let's go. You don't have to be, 6'6" and breathe fire and look like a dragon out there. If you make pitches, if you're composed, if you execute in big situations, you're going to have success more often than not, no matter the stage. And it was really fun carrying some of those lessons of that year into the postseason in 06.
You guys sit in that bullpen all night. I mean, and this is what a bullpen guy does. Tell me a little bit about favorite moments or just goofy moments. I mean, there's so much stuff that must go on down there. I know you're the scouting director, so you have to be so buttoned up and you can't really. But give me something that 2 or 3, maybe 1, whatever. What's it like? Just you had 7 innings where you're just not doing anything, especially when Carp's on the mound.
Yeah, no, look, the first few innings are fun. I mean, they are. And when you're going good, let me just be clear, when you're going good and you're pitching good and you're confident, they're very fun. And when you're going good and you're pitching confident and Carp's on the mound, then it turns into a mess and you just have a feeling that that you're not going to be called on. But one of the fun things about being the bullpen is that you do have a chance to pitch every day. And certainly as a left-handed guy who, you only face a batter or two. And so about that 4th, 5th inning, there is that knot in the stomach that starts building up. And I think that's one of the funnest things to talk about with the guys who I did play with, is recalling that knot in the stomach. And some of them miss that. If they're not in the game or they're not being competitive, they miss that knot. Luckily, as you mentioned, I'm a scouting director now. I have that knot. There's real stakes to what the draft brings to the Cardinals. But seeing those guys and knowing that those same guys who were, I don't know, let's just say, being a little immature for the first 5 innings, it was fun to, for the next few innings of every game, 160 times a year, try to get a batter or 2 out.
You are what I call quiet funny. I mean, I've never seen anybody who just seems kind of buttoned up, but man, is that a good assessment? You laughed. Obviously, I'm right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Quiet funny.
Yeah, I don't know the term for it. I just know that there's a time and a place for...
Well, you're left-handed.
Yeah, there's a time and a place for everything, and with those that see a different side of me, they probably are surprised sometimes that I can get as serious as I am, too.
So you have a moment, and this is what I love about Cardinal baseball. Like, Gary Bennett will always be remembered for 2 home runs, walk-offs against the Cubs.
I talked to Gary the other day.
I talk to Benny all the time. I love that guy. Like I said, this whole Scott Rowland's here today. I mean, just Edmund, just such a good guy, such a fun group. And so he's remembered for that. Julian Tavares is remembered for punching a phone in 05. How about a Julian Tavares story, actually, before I move on to the next question?
No, those ones for sure are not for the record.
Well, this isn't on the record. This is no one's listening.
Yeah, good point.
Oh, but you really... Okay, so no comment on that. But the fact that you, if you look at Game 7, 2006 NLCS, the game-winning pitcher is not Jeff Suppan. It's not Adam Wainwright. He got the save. It's Randy Flores. And I just always think, one, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing, right?
That's not what I'm getting. Just the fact that those little details, it's not just me remembering this. This is like, we're sitting in the Redbird Club right now, and I'm pretty sure people will come by and go like, Flo, Game 7 winner. I mean, does that mean anything to you that was like, and that game was so special? Tell me about that game and just what it means to you that your name is attached to that. Because I think the other one I always talk about is Jake Westbrook is the game winner of Game 6, 2011. A lot of people don't remember that, but that just tells you what a team is. You need 25. What does it mean when we talk about this?
You know what? I think you said it best. That game and then the championship afterwards, forever, it's a pinch me moment where you're attached to a World Series winner. Look, I'm not Scott Rowland. I'm not Albert Pujols. I'm not Chris Carpenter. but we all got the same ring. And
were you just doing Stuart Smalley, the Al Franken character in SNL, where he goes, "I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, I'm not Chris Carpenter, but gosh darn it, people like me." I'm sorry.
The ring's the same, and I think that I would say there was such it was really I don't know, I can't get the right word for it. There's no word that wraps this up. But there really was no better feeling than after Game 7 to be able to high five, to hug, to cheers, and look in the eye of those other guys on the team and know that I didn't mug it up. You know, the stakes were that big, and it was the place was shaking, and for a day. I met that challenge. We won the game and got a ring. It's really fun.
Yeah, and like I said, it's just, as I'm a Cardinal fan, just whatever. As a kid, I've just grown up on this stuff, die hard. And that's what I love about being a Cardinal fan, is that you, Gary Bennett, trying to think of other like niche moments, but just those type of things, you'll be remembered forever. Just last thing, we're talking about you being the scouting director. Cardinals haven't made the playoffs the last 2 years. It seems like it's a team concept of staying young, staying affordable, drafting within, which is what they've been doing since Mo took over. It seems like that would put a little more pressure on you. Just tell me if that's kind of what you sense, that, hey, this, there's 30 scouting directors, but we take this thing very seriously, because this is how we want to win. We want to see Harrison Bader play up here. We want to see Magnus Sierra. We want those guys to stay here, play their formative young mid-20s years up here and win. Is that sort of, am I right about kind of that?
I mean, and you guys have talked about it here in town, and are knowledgeable fans. It starts with our owner, and then obviously with Mo and Gersh. There's a track record here that shows it has been done, and it can be done. Now, though, other teams are also, even those with greater resources, are also on that same path. And so the challenge now, and it's one we gladly bear, is to continue to push and find edges and wins in the margins in order to allow us to continue what we expect here, which is contend for championships year in and year out. And so even now, while I'm here watching today's game and tomorrow's game, our scouts are out canvassing the country, prepping for the draft in June, in order to find value out of every one of our 40 picks. And it's something that I'm extremely thrilled to be back with the organization. It's a responsibility that I do not take lightly, and I hope that it's something that bears fruit for this organization for years to come.
You said Gary kind of is the farm director, so it's a different job. Yeah. But you do, I mean, it has to be sort of thrilling to see guys that you drafted, some guys that you've talked about kind of doing their thing early on, right? I mean, how does that make you feel?
Yeah, no, it is. That's the part.
You make that decision for a team, and then it's...
When I was hired, and the Cardinals were in the playoffs in 2015, I was just a few months into the job, and I could see the look on the faces of those in the GM suite, as they knew the history of every single player that got there, and they knew the story behind it, whether it was the trade, a free agent signing, a minor league free agent, a draft. They knew whatever problems happened in the minor leagues. They knew the coaches who impacted them, the injury. They knew it all, and I was envious of the look in their faces as they were seeing that come to fruition. And my hope is that shortly here, the look on my face will match what I saw just a couple years ago.
Quiet funny. I didn't get any. I'm kind of sad.
You built it up, not me.
Well, people need to know he's very funny. And I think he's wearing his Cardinal button-ups, and he can't really be the Randy Flores that I remember as a player. But this was very fun. I enjoyed this.
That's a good thing.
I hope you enjoyed it.
I did.
Now you're going to go listen to other ones.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Can't wait.
I don't believe you. That's Randy Flores, scouting director for the Cardinals. That's so awesome that he's doing that. And I'm a big fan of Randy Flores.
Oh, thanks, bro.
Baseball and Beyond, sponsored by Masses Restaurants. Go check them out. 5 locations in St. Louis, stlmasses.com. That's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you for listening, and keep subscribing on iTunes.
Oh, my God.